Hello and welcome to our webinar. We'll be talking about browser-based development in SharePoint using Smart Action Pro. Today, when we want to add some business logic to our SharePoint lists and document libraries, we can use one of the following approaches. We can be using declarative workflows created in SharePoint Designer, but they are pretty limited in functionality and not a lot of things that you can do with them. You can write custom workflows using Visual Studio, but for that you'll have to have knowledge and experience developing under SharePoint, and you would have still to deploy and activate those. It takes a lot of time and effort. You can write custom event receivers again in Visual Studio. Again, you'd need to know how to develop and have the experience, and again there is deployment and activation involved. So what would be a better option? Smart Action Pro allows you to implement your business logic without writing any code. So you just use your browser, and it takes literally a fraction of time to do. So what does Smart Action Pro actually do? It has 15 different action types which it can execute, and we'll be covering which action types are available in a minute. Now you can run those actions according to events, such as items are added, modified, or deleted, or maybe checked in, checked out. You can run them according to a timer. For instance, 2 days before the due date of an event, or of a task, or an event, or maybe daily, weekly, or monthly. And you can even run them manually by clicking on a ribbon button, for instance. Your actions can be executed always, or they can be executed according to conditions. For instance, the amount is greater than $1,000. You can even use after change conditions, meaning that I only want to run this action after the status is changed to completed. So the action will not run before that, and the action will not run after that update. You can also have actions running always, or have optional actions, so your users can control whether or not to run a specific action. You also have the capability of having before and after event actions. So for instance, you are updating in a list item, so you can have actions running before and after that update. Why is it important? Because before actions can, for instance, prevent the actual saving from happening. So you can have your business logic there to prevent, for instance, creating illegal or unwanted items. Smart Action Pro also has full logging and error notification capabilities, so you always can look and see what actions actually executed, and even receive an email telling you that a certain action failed. Another important part is that the actions are saved as part of your list and or site templates. So you can implement your business logic and then save and reuse it. And the most important one, it's 100% browser-based solution. So you configure everything in the browser, and you manage everything using just your browser within your SharePoint site. Okay, so now we can take a look at the different action types. So you can be updating list items in a current list and a current site, in any site in the site collection, or even across site collections. The same goes for creating new items, deleting items, copying items. You can send emails, you can run workflows, you can manage permissions for items, folders, lists, sites. You can create new sites or new lists. You can even execute external database stored procedures on any type of database, or call external web services. You can also manage Active Directory, creating users, groups, assigning users to groups, and so on. You can also use print functions to print and maybe send out this printout as a PDF attachment to internal or external recipients. You can also calculate summaries and do something with this information. We'll be covering that in the demo. And you can also simply run any PowerShell script that you want. Okay, so let's go to our demo now. So what we have here is basically a project site. So we are managing our projects from here. We're creating new projects, and that's what we are going to be doing now. So we'll be creating a list item for the project, and we're simply providing it with its title and providing it with its start and end date. Now what's going to happen once we click on save is that these actions over here are going to start running. Now you see that the actions are stored within this action column, and the action column is responsible for not just showing you the actions, but for also storing the results of their execution so you can review them later. So you see also that actions have this little check mark next to them, and it's now disabled. These actions are set to run always, so the user has no control over them. But you can also have the checkboxes enabled, so users can turn off actions that they don't want, or it can even be enabled and unchecked, so users can actually opt in and run actions that they do want. Okay, so what are we going to do with our actions now? First of all, we're going to create an Active Directory domain group for the project. Then we're going to add the current user to that group. Then we're going to set that group to be to a user or group field in the current item. Then we're going to be updating an external database with the details of this project. Next, we're going to be creating two tasks in a separate task list. Now the first one is called initial approval, and this one is actually only created when this checkbox requires approval is checked. You can see here that this action has conditions. The other one is created always. Then we are going to create a site, a team site under the current site for the project. And then we're going to set the group that we've just created over here, the domain group, and grant that group contributor permissions on the new site. Then we're going to be updating the current item with the link to the new site. And we're also going to be creating a new task, and this task is now going to be in the new site within that new team site. And then we're going to be sending an email back to ourselves with the link to the new site and saying that everything completed successfully. So you can see here that now we are clicking on save. What's going to happen is that the actions, some of them are going to run before, some of them are going to run after the save. So you can see here now it has completed, but we still don't see the link because the actions still take place. Creating a site takes a few seconds. So if we refresh this page, we'll probably see the link now. Okay. So first of all, you can see here that the tasks have been created, and you can even see them from directly from the project. And we can go to our new site. Let's click on it to see what happened there. So you see that this new site has the same name as the project. And if we go to the site permissions, you will see that the new domain group called demo users has been granted contribute permissions. And if we go to the tasks list, we'll see the new initial task has been created as well. So let's go back to the project list and let's see how we actually did that. So all we need to do is to go to the list settings. In the list settings, the same place where you would be adding your columns and setting the title of the list, you see action settings as well. So if we go inside action settings, you will see all the actions that we saw earlier and some additional actions that will be seen in the future. You can see all the actions here. So let's go over the settings of the action. So you'll have 4 tabs of information to fill out. So on the first one, we're getting the just general settings for the action, its type, name, so on. Under the advanced settings, we'll be setting some more advanced configurations for the action. The action settings are specific to the type of the action that we selected, and the conditions control whether or not the action is to be executed. Now let's go over the tabs in more detail. So let's go to the general. So here are the 15 types of actions that we talked earlier about. Then once we select the type of action, we can give it a name so our users can recognize and understand what it does. The same goes for the description, and we can also select which events the action is going to respond to. So we can set such events as item is added, new, edited, deleted, and so on, and or we can set the action to be timer based. So the timer based actions can run, for instance, depending on the value of a date time column. So for instance, we can run an action 2 days before the end date of the project, or we can run it daily, weekly, or monthly. Okay, let's go over to advanced settings. Here we can control, for instance, if the action is hidden. A hidden action still executes, but the users never see it, not in the action column, and not in the execution log. Under execution, we can control if it executes always, if the user can opt out or opt in, and the checkbox that we saw earlier. And there's also an option of showing as a column. And that means that the action will be executed manually. And we actually add in a column that you can click on to activate this action. Or you can even add a context menu and ribbon button. Here you can specify, for instance, the icon that goes to your ribbon and the permissions required to see that option. So there are some additional options here as well that are covered in more details in the user guide, but I still want to point your attention to a couple of things here. First of all, you have the ability to run actions under impersonation, meaning that it runs with higher permissions that the user actually has. So for instance, you can create items in a list that the user actually don't have any permissions to do so. You can also set your actions to execute synchronously, meaning before the event happens, and you can even cancel that event if the action results in an error. So we're talking about that as well, and we'll be showing that in a minute. I'll skip the action settings for a second. Let's go over to conditions. So you can have no conditions whatsoever. That's perfectly fine. You can add any conditions that you want. For instance, the title contains the word so and so, but you can also set after change conditions. So for instance, status after change equals to completed will make the action run only after the project has been completed. So it will not run before that and will not run afterwards again. So now let's go to the action settings. And the action settings, as I mentioned earlier, they're specific to the type of action that you selected. So this action is an update list items action. So what we need to do here is basically find the items that we want to update and provide the new values for their columns. So first of all, we'll need to find the site. So we can use the current site, we can use any site in the site collection, or we can even provide a runtime value. So now a runtime value is something that can only be known in the runtime. So we can build an expression that uses some text and maybe some column values, and this expression will be evaluated at the runtime. So for instance, in our case, we are creating new sites under the current site, sites for the project, and part of the URL is the ID of the project item. So in this case, for each project item, the action will go to a different site. And the same goes for the list. We can select the list, and we can also provide a runtime value if you want. Once we have the list, we can now select which items we want. We can select one item, we can select multiple items. So for instance, if I want to select the current item, I will do something like ID equals ID. So basically it's one item and it's the current item. But I can do anything else that I want. For instance, I want all the items that have the status as completed, and I can do that as well. I can have obviously multiple conditions here. Now once I have the items, I can now update them. I'll be simply mapping column names to the values that I want, and I can even again use the value picker. I can use column values, other columns. I can use some functions over here, and I can even use simple arithmetic. So for instance, something like that will also work. And also important to mention that the value picker and this field will validate your value and make sure that it's the correct type. So you will only be able to enter something that is a date when you want to set a value to a date column. So this is an update list item. If you go to a different action, such as create group, which is manage active directory type of action, we'll see here that the action settings are completely different. Now we need to select the domain, the organizational unit, and so on. So each type of action will have a different set of settings. Okay, let's go back to our project list and see some additional features. Now, how do we start the project? We can obviously edit it and change the status to be in progress. That's not the best way to do it because it takes a lot of time. What we can do, we can simply select one or multiple projects and click on start. This is one of those actions that appear as a ribbon button. So I'm just starting this from here. Really easy to do. And the same exact way I can complete the project. Again, selecting one or multiple projects. Okay, and the other thing that happens when I turn the status of the project to be completed is that a printout of all the details of the project are sent to my email. If we go here, we will see that first we got the email when the site was created, and now we got an email with all the details of the project. So let's just see how these guys are configured. Pretty much the same. Go back to the action settings. We're already familiar with that, and here are the actions. So let's look at the start action. So you see here that indeed it was set as show as column, and this is the icon that we saw earlier. In the action settings, what we're doing is basically setting the status to be in progress for the current item in the current list. And we also have a condition that before that the status was not started. If we go now and see the print action, which is a bit different, so the things here to see, first of all, it's set to be hidden because it can be executed without showing the action in a form. Another thing, the action in the action settings, it's basically taking the current item and then emails that to the creator of the project with some subject and body. And in the conditions, you can see that the condition is status after change equals to completed. So that makes sure that this printout is only sent when we actually change the project to be completed, not before and not after that. So now last thing that I wanted to show you in this demo is something to do with preventing saving an item because the action failed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to assign a resource to our project. So basically going into the project, we are adding new resource, and the resource name test2, and he's our tester. Now this resource is already assigned to a different project for an overlapping time period, and we have an action here that's called check double booking that will actually check for that, and when we try to save it, it will raise an error saying that the resource is already assigned to another project. So let's see how we can configure something like that. So we'll go to resources. That's where the action actually resides, in action settings, and here's the only action that we have here. Check double booking is calculate summary action. So calculate summary basically takes a group of items and calculates a summary of one of its fields. And let's go to the advanced settings first, and you see here that this action is set to be synchronous and it's set to prevent saving when the action fails. Now let's go to the action settings. So first of all, we are looking for items with the same employee and an overlapping time period that belong to different items. Once we have that, we can now calculate the number of such items. We're basically counting the number of IDs. And then what we want is for this number to be 0, basically meaning that the employee is not assigned to any other project. When it's not 0, we are going to be raising an error. We can also store this data. The error that we are going to be raising, this is the error message, and that's the one that we saw earlier. So basically it raises an error, and because it's set to prevent saving, it will prevent us from creating that booking. So this is really easy to configure according to our requirements. So in summary, you saw that we were creating a very advanced system of generating a project. We were creating a site, groups, we were updating an external database, we were creating tasks, and we were binding everything together, and everything was done in the browser, and it literally takes about an hour to complete the whole demo application, such as you see here. Okay, so in summary, Smart Action Pro makes it very easy to implement complex and sophisticated business logic in SharePoint without any code, without any custom development, using just the browser and in a fraction of time that it would usually take you. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you on the next